Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. We are going to get started with today's webinar. My name is Samantha Malat Brown, and I will be the moderator for today's session. On a personal note, I'm very excited for this collaboration between MHPN and the Downtown Synagogue because I'm a board member and passionate about the mission for both of these organizations. Missions for both of these organizations. So today's session, we have staff and leaders of the Isaac Agree Downtown Synagogue in Detroit, and they'll be discussing the organization and the building's past, present, and future. The historic downtown building is currently undergoing a comprehensive renovation and will be ready for occupancy in just a few short months. Once completed, in addition to being a synagogue, the building will serve the growing Jewish population in Detroit as a hub for Jewish activity in the city. It's going to be outfitted with office and co-working space, event space. There's going to be room to house several organizations to encourage collaboration and shared programming among the various organizations. Before I turn it over to our speakers, I just want to go over a few things. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box as you think of them. The questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to use the chat box to share your thoughts and resources as well. Both of the Q&A and chat boxes can be located in the bar at the bottom of your screen. If the bar disappears, you can just wiggle your mouse to see it again. And please participate in the survey after the webinar concludes. This will help us to continue to bring webinars that are relevant and enjoyable for everyone. If this is your first time attending our webinars, we are the Michigan Historic Preservation Network. We advocate for Michigan's historic places to contribute to our economic vitality, sense of place, and connection to the past. We could not do the work we do without our members and volunteers. If you are not a member yet, please consider joining us at mhpn.org. We also have a really fun conference coming up in just a few weeks. So if you haven't registered yet or haven't heard about it yet, please be sure to look into that and join us. It should be very fun. It's on Mackinac Island this year. So. This webinar is supported in part by an award from the Michigan Arts and Culture Council. So a big thank you to them for sponsoring this series. And finally, I'm going to just introduce our speakers. We have quite a few with us today, which is amazing that we have so many people from the synagogue taking time to share with us. The first person that we have presenting is going to be Dr. Martin Herman. He is a PhD that joined Dr. Martin Herman, PhD, joined the Isaac Agree Downtown Synagogue's congregation in early 1989, seeking a convenient traditional synagogue at which to say his daily Kaddish for his recently departed parents. He remained a regular worshiper and became an increasingly active member of the congregation in the following years. And he had assisted Rabbi Gamze and Cantor Idelson in conducting services and becoming more and more involved in the synagogue's administration. When the rabbi retired in 2001, Marty became the downtown synagogue's de facto ritual leader. Over the next few decades, he was elected to numerous different offices within the organization and continues contributions to this day. I see him every month in meetings without fail. And as a longtime resident of Detroit, he remains committed to the synagogue and its goals of maintaining a traditional Jewish presence in the city. Then we have Rachel Redman, who is the executive director. Rachel became the executive director of the Downtown Synagogue in January 2022. She's a strategic synagogue leader with a decade of experience managing teams and building relationships with stakeholders. And before coming to the Downtown Synagogue, she worked at Temple Bethel in Bloomfield Hills for 6 years as their program director, director of member engagement, and associate director. She holds a master's from New York University in Jewish Studies, a bachelor's from the University of Michigan in Jewish Studies and Women's Studies, and a second master's in nonprofit management from Gratz College. She studied at the Jewish Theological Seminary, Yeshivat Hadar, and Paradis Institute for Jewish Studies. Outside of work, Rachel enjoys spending time with her husband and 2 young children, staying active, and obsessively playing the New York Times spelling bee, which is awesome. Then we have Rabbi Ariana Silverman. She became the rabbi of the Downtown Synagogue in 2016. She's a native of Chicago and graduated from Harvard University. She was ordained by the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion, is an alumna of the Wexner Graduate Fellowship Program and CLAL's Rabbi Religion, is an alumna of the Wexner, sorry, I'm rereading the same line. CLAL's Rabbi Without Borders Student Fellowship, and is currently a fellow in the Shalom Hartman Institute's Rabbinic Leadership Initiative. Sorry, that was just like a lot of accomplishments. So I'm sorry that I stumbled over that. I can't even keep up reading with it, let alone everything you've done. She served as a rabbi at multiple congregations and has worked for the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, the Sierra Club, Hazon, and the Central Conference of American Rabbis. In addition to her social justice work in Detroit, she was a CCAR delegate on the Commission of Social Action of Reform Judaism. She has published on topics including food justice, Jewish parenting, theology, and mental health. She has served on multiple boards in Metro Detroit and teaches extensively both locally and nationally. I've taken a few of her classes and she's a great teacher. And she lives in 12 cities, but her home in the city of Detroit is where she's lived the longest, and with her partner and children. And then last but definitely not least is Samantha Wool, who is the board president of this Downtown Synagogue. She's been a proud and active member of the synagogue since moving to Detroit and joining 10 years ago. She's graduated from University of Michigan with a degree in medieval and early modern studies and works as a political director and consultant. She has previously served as political director for Attorney General Dana Nessel, campaign manager for State Senator Stephanie Chang, and former State Representative Padma Kappa, and the Deputy District Director for U.S. Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin. She has been very involved in community engagement and coalition efforts in Southeastern Michigan for many years, serving as a board member of the Jewish Community Relations Council, American Jewish Committee, founding the Muslim Jewish Forum of Detroit Grassroots Collective, and co-chairing the American Jewish Committee's Access Detroit Young Leadership Program. She was recently appointed to serve as a board member for the Jewish Historical Society of Michigan. So that's a cool tie-in too. Great. I hope that I didn't stumble over that too badly. Y'all are just so accomplished. I don't know what to do about it. So we're going to go ahead and begin the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the reins over. And I believe our first speaker is Marty.
Thank you very much. In offering a thumbnail sketch of a pivotal moment in the history of the Downtown Synagogue, I invite your attention to the period roughly 2005 to 2009 in a presentation which might be entitled A Synagogue on the Verge in a City on the Verge. In 2005, the Downtown Synagogue was the only remaining freestanding synagogue in Detroit, city that at one time housed more than 60 synagogues, and it had been the only freestanding synagogue in the city of Detroit for several decades. In 2001, the Jewish population living in the city, in all portions of the city, from Lafayette Park to the Cass Corridor to Palmer Woods, numbered about 1,000. By contrast, in 1950, the Jewish population living in the metropolitan area, most of whom lived in Detroit, numbered about 80,000, but even then, about 20,000 of that 80,000 had already left Detroit for the suburbs. After 1967, of course, the exodus became a torrent. In 2005, Detroit was hemorrhaging population and careening towards bankruptcy. For example, in 1950, there were 1,819,568 people in Detroit. In 2005, there was 632,454. In 2005, the downtown synagogue finances were in dire straits, limited income from dues, from donations, from grants, and even from an exhausted endowment, never a good idea, resulted in a contentious series of board meetings culminating in a recommendation with qualifications to sell the building and relocate. Now, interestingly, that the meeting of the board that resulted in the final recommendation was extremely contentious. The board split right down the middle, and it left the chairman of the board, then the president of the synagogue, to cast the deciding vote. He was much in favor, and he voted in favor of recommending to the synagogue membership that the building be sold and the synagogue be relocated. After that recommendation, a real estate agent was engaged to assess what the value of the building might be, not to solicit prospective buyers. Between 2006 and 2007, the board recommendation that the synagogue be sold and relocated became generally known and was hotly debated in the public square and widely reported in the media. In a videotaped interview that I gave to a reporter of the Detroit News that lasted for over an hour, we discussed the situation. The result was an extended article in the Detroit News that was very misleading. Facts were distorted. My words in quotation marks were misinterpreted. I was very unhappy. After I pointed this out to the powers that be at the news, I said, look, you have all of this on videotape, go back and look at it, listen to what I actually said. 3 days later, at the bottom of page 32, a retraction was given. In any event, pursuant to the synagogue's bylaws, the board's recommendation to sell the building with qualifications, and the qualifications were very interesting, that the synagogue would be relocated in an area to the north bounded by I-94, to the east by I-75, to the south by Warren Avenue, and to the west by Woodward Avenue, right across from the Detroit Public Library and Wayne State University. But pursuant to the bylaws of the synagogue, the recommendation to sell the buildings was submitted to a special meeting of the congregation that took place in 2007. The board recommendation was rejected. The president resigned. In 2007, we were presented with the problem of how to proceed financially. It had become so problematic that those of us who attended services on Saturday were sitting in our overcoats because the synagogue boiler needed replacing. We managed to negotiate a $100,000 10-year interest-free loan from the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit, and we ordered a new boiler. The boiler was fixed. Came 2008, the Great Recession. Federation asked those to whom they had loaned money, if any was left over, could it be returned? We returned $25,000, resulting in payments of $7,500 a year rather than $10,000 a year. Eventually, after a payment or two had been made, the remainder of the debt was canceled. But also in 2008, a trickle of young, whom I call urban pioneers, most of them were attorneys, social workers, filmmakers, entrepreneurs, foundation executives, etc., began to trickle back into Detroit, recognized somewhat to their amazement that there was a synagogue in the city. Many of them were children of parents who had lived and grown up in Detroit, but had subsequently moved to the suburbs. But these young urban pioneers became increasingly interested in the affairs of the synagogue. Their interests didn't always coincide with those of the old guard. And consequently, in the annual meeting that took place on 2009, very heavily attended by media of all kinds, the two major Detroit newspapers, the television stations, even NPR, it was a rather raucous meeting, the result being that a board that had been recommended by the old guard, who the few who had kept the synagogue going through its worst period of time, was replaced by those nominated from the floor by the younger folks. The meeting concluded. Some of the old timers left and never returned. Some of the old timers returned, but never again took an interest in any part of administering the synagogue. Some of the old timers, myself among them, stayed and tried to work with the newcomers. Now, I'd be happy to answer. That's a thumbnail sketch of a very long and a very involved, a very complex and a very unhappy 4 years. But if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them subsequently. I turn the program over to the three young, charming women with whom I have been invited to participate.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Marty, so much. Really honored to be working with you and have learned from you through the years. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Samantha or Sam Wall, and I am the proud president of the Isaac Agree Downtown Synagogue. And to Marty's story, it has since had a happier ending and a happier future as we are here today. And I'll share a little bit about how I found the synagogue and why I joined and what has kept me involved through the years, and a little bit about how excited I am for this next chapter for our future. So I first moved to the city about 10 years ago. I grew up in suburban Detroit. And when I moved to the city, I was looking for a synagogue, for a place to go to services on Shabbat, Friday night, Saturday morning, to celebrate holidays and to meet people. I was very fortunate to find the Downtown Synagogue in Detroit, as Marty had mentioned, that currently at the time in the early 2010s, that the other synagogues in the region were outside of the city. So it would be a 25 or 30-minute drive were I to want to find a synagogue closer. So to be able to have one in the city was really meaningful. Also to be able to participate in city life and really appreciating the role that the synagogue played in the city and being connected to other houses of worship and other organizations nearby. When I first joined the synagogue, some of the highlights included the meals that we shared together Friday night after services. We would have lovely meals that we would cook in the kitchen, sometimes even using vegetables that we grew in the garden, and being able to break bread together, both in terms of people who are living in the city, living in the suburbs, all different ages, all different demographics. Really getting to know one another has been a highlight and something that I'm looking forward to continuing once we're back in the building. Another particular highlight that I remember, a holiday celebration. There's a Jewish holiday called Simchas Torah, where we celebrate the annual reading of our book. We read it in full from a holiday in September, October through the next year. And when we complete the reading, we celebrate with song and dance and the text. And it's really a celebration of Judaism, a celebration of the synagogue. And it's been really unique because for the downtown synagogue, we were really able to go into the streets of downtown with our holy and sacred books and with each other, and singing and dancing and meeting people. And it was really alive and dynamic and vibrant. And we would have people join in with us. And it really, for me, captured the spirit of the synagogue and of what we're trying to do. So one of the Simchas Torah celebrations, I look forward to it every year. And that's something that has kept me coming back. Another highlight, I mentioned earlier, the garden. We have a partnership with a garden on the east side and being able to work there. Another highlight, there are so many, working with some of the committees through the years. We have an active ritual committee. And one of the things we worked on together was creating a prayer book and really being able to work together to find the translations and that were most meaningful to us and that were accessible, and to create community and build community together. So it's really been participatory, which is another unique aspect of the congregation, that from the moment you walk in, you are encouraged to join, to help with the services, to help be an usher or a greeter, to help with meals. So really encouraging the participation has also been something that's been a highlight for me. Another aspect that's really been wonderful and encouraging are interfaith partnerships, both in the downtown area with other churches on the east side. We were part of the Riverfront East Side Congregational Initiative, working on mapping different assets in Detroit and talking about the resources that we have and lifting that up, working with a congregation in the North End, Breakers Covenant International Church, and it's housed in another historic building in the old Temple Bethel. And our partnership and collaboration with the church that currently occupies the former temple has also been really meaningful. And in particular, recently, we have a Passover Seder together, where it's a freedom and social justice Seder, and we eat together and we talk about our values. And that's also really been a wonderful part of the synagogue, to be able to meet other congregations and other communities in the city. So that's a couple of highlights that have really been wonderful, and through the years that have been a consistent and reliable opportunity to be able to meet people. And another part of that's been enjoyable is connecting with the generations, that getting to know Marty's experiences and others from previous generations, and having the amazing opportunity to be a part of bridging from the past to the future, and making sure that we carry with us the stories and the memories and the experiences of those who have been before us, that the synagogue community is over 100 years old, which is incredible, especially given all of the challenges that the city has been through the years. There were a number of uncertain moments of both for the city and for the synagogue. So to be able to be here 100 years later and have a bright, optimistic, exciting future is really exciting. And I feel particularly honored to be able to connect this past chapter with the next chapter and learning the stories. A couple of fun moments that stand out. One, for the high holidays, that we've also changed locations through the years, depending on our attendance and the availability of space. Another reason looking forward to having a space, but that one of the times that we had high holiday services was at a Veterans Memorial Building, also downtown, near to what was Cobo Hall. And that while they were setting up for the service, it happened to be a Fleetwood Mac concert next door. And talking about having to hear the Fleetwood Mac training over and over and over again while getting ready for what is a very deep and meaningful spiritual time Jewishly, and kind of just the dynamic of being in the city and city life. And that always stands out to me of just kind of the interplay between all of the different dynamics that we are a part of the city, very much so. And Marty has shared another story with high holidays. We were in a few different hotels and something would happen last minute, or there would be something with the road or something with an event, and we would have to figure it out, and we would have to move and collaborate and call people and kind of go with the flow and be able to change things at a moment's notice and notify the community. And it's been really a dynamic experience, and all the more so looking forward to having a stable, reliable home and location where people will be able to find us, where we won't have to be changing things at the spur of the moment due to another event or another organization. That's something we're certainly looking forward to. And one more piece that I'll add in particular that I'm looking forward to, that's been through us or through my experiences with the synagogue, our sanctuary is located on the second floor of the beautiful historic building. And it's an amazing room. If you have not been in this space, I encourage you to come visit once we're back open, or through the pictures that Rachel will show. It's beautiful, beautiful, colorful windows, and it's a really spiritual space and uplifting. However, it was only accessible by stairs because the elevator had not worked in quite some time. And the funding to restore the elevator was beyond our capacity at the time when we were having the early conversations of, did we have enough people to keep it going? And from when I joined, one of the items that was on my mind and that was mentioned to me was, we really need to get this elevator because we pride ourselves on being accessible. And currently, without the elevator, part of our community was not able to worship with us. And it was really on our minds and a priority that were we to be able to raise the funds to complete a renovation, that we would be able to have the elevator. So it's particularly exciting that we've, through the fundraising and our capital campaign, are including the elevator. And that's really bringing together our values, being accessible, being welcoming, really building community together. So those are some things that I'm looking forward to. I'm really grateful to be a part of this community. It's really been wonderful, and I'm excited to continue the momentum. So thank you so much for being here, for learning. And as the rabbi and Rachel will share, we have many opportunities still to participate. So we look forward to seeing you, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam. I'm Rachel Rudman. I'm the Executive Director at Downtown Synagogue, and I'm going to share some photos of our space with you and tell you a bit about the capital campaign that Sam mentioned and some of our future plans for the building renovation. You can't see that because I didn't push screen share. 1 second. Here we go. Yeah, can you see it? Okay, cool. Okay, great. So, these are my novice PowerPoint presentation skills, but I will show you some photos of what the building has looked like in the past, what it looks like in this moment, and what it will look like when our renovation is done. To back up a little bit, we bought the building that we have in Capitol Park in the 60s. Marty's horrified that I can't tell you the exact year. I want to say 63. But we've always been in the city of Detroit and in Capitol Park, I think since the 30s actually, and in our current building since the 60s. And we hadn't done any like substantial renovation on it. So it was not in great shape, as you'll see in the photos. And as the Jewish community has gotten larger in the city of Detroit, more people like the Sams of the community have moved back into the city over the past decade, or I guess 2 now at this point. There's been a renewed need to have services and resources and programs available to this growing Jewish population in the city. Our building is really well located right downtown at Griswold and Clifford. And we had this unique opportunity to lean into our mission of being a beacon for the Jewish community in Metro Detroit and actually renovate and reimagine the downtown synagogue as serving as a hub for Jewish life, which both means being a synagogue, but also means something more expansive. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to start by showing you some pictures of what our building has looked like. So this is what it was before we bought it. This is when it was Fintex, which was a men's clothing store. I think that this photo is probably from the early 2000s. It's not in great shape, as you can see, which aligns with Marty's telling of our story. But one thing that you will notice is the iconic stained glass windows, which have been there as long as we've been there, and will continue to be there, as you'll see in the future photos too. Similar time period. We did have the building power washed in, I think, about 2017, which really did make the facade look much nicer. So this is really what it looked like just before we entered construction. This is just a beautiful shot. The building is triangular in shape. It's a unique building. It's not so large. It's about 11,000 square feet total. So the side that you're looking at is very narrow. I want to say less than 10 feet at that point, and then it widens as it goes down the block. So this is an interior picture. This was our social hall, our main community space where the community gathered for meals and for programs and for holiday celebrations. On the first floor, you can see out the window. You can see where the windows are. That's Griswold. I should have pointed out, I'll go back, that the exterior here was brick. So when you walk by, many people walked by and had no idea that they were walking past a synagogue because there wasn't great signage and because it wasn't very welcoming. You saw brick and then you saw colored window and you really didn't know what was going on inside. And when you were inside, it was pretty dark. We didn't have the light from the windows there. So this was the first floor space. This was our sanctuary, like Sam said, on the second floor, not accessible unless you were able to climb the flight of stairs. And then the third and fourth floor of the building had not even been insured. They were like blighted out and not used. And I can say my personal experience with them is that they were very scary. It was very scary to go up there. So this was what the third floor had looked like before construction started. And this is the fourth floor. So our building, we began construction in July of last year. And we are under construction now, and we are planning to be finished within the next month or two, and then moving back in and opening for the community late summer. So to get here, we had a capital campaign, a comprehensive campaign. The board got together, and actually it came from a vision that's more than a decade old of people in the community thinking through what it would be like to be a hub for Jewish life in Detroit and what the building could be. So the board and staff worked together to design this vision and to pitch a vision that was actually really widely supported by foundations in the Detroit area and beyond, and also from the membership of the synagogue, but really the wider Jewish and even non-Jewish community in the Metro Detroit area. So we successfully raised $5.75 million over the past few years. It actually started right before COVID, so that was the timeline of raising this money. And we entered construction last June. So we had a successful comprehensive campaign, and this is what the building, these photos are from sort of the last like 8 months of construction, so some different moments in time. You can see here that the brick was removed. This is the front on Griswold. The brick was removed here. And you can see the doors were removed, but big deal for the brick to come down and to get ready for the windows. I forgot to say that. So in the design, another thing, like Sam said, in making the elevator making the space accessible with an elevator, another way to make the building warm and welcoming and accessible was to open up the brick and make it all windows. So when you walk past the building now, you'll be able to see what's going on inside. When you're inside, you'll be able to feel connected to the neighborhood around you. So having the brick come down was both really symbolic and important for the community. Elevator, like Sam mentioned, this is the most complicated and expensive part of the whole project. They had to completely remove the elevator shaft and rebuild it in order to make it ADA compliant. So for much of the project, there was just a huge hole in the middle of the building while they were rebuilding the elevator shaft. Turns out that there's some beautiful terrazzo floors underneath much of the building. So this here is polishing the second floor, which is our sanctuary, and discovering that there's some beautiful terrazzo underneath. It was exciting to me when the framing started to go up. These are turning into bathrooms on the third floor, but seeing framing made it really real. And then these are much more recent. So these are a couple. On the right is a small conference room, on the left is a private office, but we are getting pretty close now. This is in the second floor. Sorry, the photo's blurry. You can see the windows here. You can see the ceilings have gone in. The second floor is going to be white and really an elevated, beautiful space for our sanctuary. And here's the window. So the window started to go in. You know, I'm sure you might be wondering, is that safer for the Jewish community? These are actually ballistic grade glass windows, which was also a huge expense for the community, but felt really important for us to have both windows and to make sure that it was secure as possible. And the small windows on the top that are clear here will be similar to the windows on the second floor and be filled in with colored glass. Okay, so next I'm going to show you the rendering. So this is this is where we're headed. It's not exactly what it will look like, but the front, this photo is pretty close to what it will look like. Yay. This is a rendering of the social hall. It will look a little bit different in terms of the interior design, but you can get the feeling. We'll have some longer tables for community meals, some more like hotel lobby type casual seating, and you can see the windows going out to Griswold here. This is a rendering of our second floor in the sanctuary. You might notice that the front has been reoriented so that the community can face east, which Jews do when they pray, and previously we had not been. So it'll be reoriented to face toward the windows here. So I didn't even talk about this at all. So the third floor and the fourth floor that hadn't been used at all were reimagined. Our spaces, this is the rabbi's line, both too large to be just for the downtown synagogue in terms of its synagogue needs, but too large to be like a full community center. So we had to sort of figure out how to use the space most effectively. So as the Jewish community has grown in the city of Detroit, Jewish organizations that are primarily based in the suburbs, such as the Jewish Community Center, the JCC, Federation, there are a handful of others. There's been this new need for them to bring their services and their programs and their resources into the city. And there's not so many Jewish buildings in the city, so we were able to serve this unique role here as being a place where they can have like a space in the city. You can see here, we're planning to have desks for organizations. So they're not necessarily, some of them are, but most of them are not moving their full operation downtown. They just want to be able to have a presence downtown so they can impact the people who live in the city, live and work in the city. And also because it's symbolic, like a recognition that there are Jews living in Detroit now and they do want to serve them. So the third floor will be the hub of this shared co-working space where organizations will have space to work collaboratively and individually together here. And a huge piece of this is also like leaning into the collaboration and shared programming model. That right now there's a lot of programming happening for a lot of organizations in the city, in Metro Detroit, and instead of programming against each other or like over each other, we want to be working together. We want the organizations to be sharing resources, having their small staffs have more support by being in one space, all the benefits of being in a co-working space and doing it in service of the Jewish community here. There's not a rendering of the fourth floor, but the fourth floor is our largest, most open space. It will be a space that can be used for programs and events, or even like family, like small wedding rehearsals or rehearsal dinners or large board meetings. So we have one like larger flexible space on the fourth floor. And here you can see this is our roof. So this is a really special part of our project that we were not able to complete in the first phase, but we are making plans to be able to complete it in the next few years. And it will be a really sweet and intimate rooftop space right downtown, which is exciting for the Downtown Synagogue and exciting for the Jewish community in general. So those are the photos that I wanted to show you. I'm gonna exit that, stop share. Okay, cool. And the last thing that I wanted to share was just about some funding sources. So before the capital campaign was largely funded by Metro Detroit Jewish folks, both members of the synagogue and also just people who believe in having a Jewish community in Detroit and like love the idea, the vision that we're building of bringing organizations together to work collaboratively downtown. And the organization, we've been very fortunate to be to receive a lot of grant funding. Has been true in the past decade, and we hope that it continues to be true. And we're also working to diversify revenue. Part of bringing the organizations in as shared workspace partners brings tenants that will pay monthly rent, and also brings the opportunity to rent out our spaces for events and for programs. And we have a model for individuals to support the Downtown Synagogue through being Downtown Synagogue Sustainers, which is our monthly giving program. So those are some of the ways that we fund ourselves, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to my beloved colleague, Rabbi Silverman.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And I want to start with words of thanks first to you, Marty. I am well aware I would not be in this job if it weren't for your tremendous leadership and ability to keep this synagogue going for so many years. I would be nowhere near as good at my job if it weren't for the tremendous leadership that's a part of the synagogue, including our amazing president. So thank you, Sam, for making us so great. And Rachel, I couldn't get through the day without you. So thank God. So I am excited because I have 5 minutes and I'm setting a timer because rabbis talk a lot to take you into sort of the future. And then we're going to open up for questions. I see there's some great questions already being put into the chat. So one of the things that's been most exciting to me over the past 10 years has both been the sense of collaboration among Jewish organizations and the growth and development of the next generation of Jewish Detroiters. One of the roles of the Downtown Synagogue has been, as more and more Jewish organizations come into the city of Detroit, recognizing its growth, that we have made sure that we're working together, that that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that is part of the vision of the building, as Rachel was explaining, was to bring everyone under one roof so that we can work more closely together. The other is the recognition that in the last 10 years, just in the synagogue membership alone, we have gone from about a dozen kids 10 years ago to 10 times that many now. We are at about 125 children under the age of 18, and that is an incredibly quick and exciting change. So part of the work that we're doing is figuring out how to make our organization include things like a religious school, which we've developed, and include things like child-friendly spaces in the building that we're renovating, and making sure that we are serving the needs of everyone in our community from 0 to 120. One of the things that I love about synagogue life is that it is open to anyone regardless of age, and we're trying to make sure that our building reflects that deeply held value. And folks like Marty get to play with my kids because they adore him. So I'm excited about the fact that our building will allow for more collaborative work. I'm excited about the fact that it will highlight the intergenerational nature of Jewish life. And I'm excited about the fact that I think it reflects where Judaism as a whole is going, by which I mean that I don't think Jews only connect to Jewish life, Jewish religion, Jewish community through worship. Synagogues have provided that tremendously important function, and Jews are connecting in a variety of different pathways, from social justice to Jewish learning to arts and culture. And to be able to provide those multiple pathways under one roof is really exciting for me as a Jewish professional, to say we want to make sure we're meeting the needs of Jews all across the Jewish spectrum and creating a future together of Jewish life. So I could not be more excited about where this building is going, where this community is going, and also how it fits into this tremendous historical arc of the last 100 years, we're going to be around for the next 100 years, and we're building for the generations that come after us to be in the city of Detroit, to be working in partnership, and to be growing in their Jewish life. So I want to move to questions, and I see that there's a lot of them. Does it make sense, Sam Malott Brown, for me to try to answer them, or do you want to hand them out? What's the best format for turning to questions?
I was told to moderate them,
Okay.
so I'll just follow instructions. I don't know what's best, but that's how we'll do it. So yeah, we have quite a few. We'll try to get through them in a timely fashion. The first actually being for Marty. Someone asked, well, it's a compliment and a question a little bit. Dr. Herman, your history of the early years is fascinating. Is this kind of history written out, digitized, and accessible into the future? You're a real resource.
I didn't quite catch the question.
The question being, is the history of the early years of the synagogue, is it written out, digitized, and accessible into the future?
Well, the history of the synagogue has been written several times. Actually, I've had 3 bites of the apple. The first time it was published in the annual book of the Michigan Jewish Historical Society. The second bite at the apple was in the formatter of the Siddur that the synagogue published about 9 years ago. The third is one that is still in progress, and that will be included, hopefully, in the material that will be distributed at the grand reopening of the renovated building. This will be a much more accurate, enlarged institutional history, because primary sources and archival sources, which were not available when I last undertook this task, are now available, particularly those associated with the Jewish News Archives, plus some materials from the original families that founded the antecedents of the downtown synagogue have provided us with some material that was not available then. I might add now that to my colleagues here on the panel, that it would be very helpful if we could find a congregant who's interested in being an archivist, because I would have loved to have had archives to deal with when I was engaged in writing these histories of the synagogue. And a lot of it was by oral communication or educated guesswork. So it would be nice with our grand reopening to have a really comprehensive archive of what the synagogue activities will be.
Right. Our next question is, the synagogue is one of the houses of worship that has survived in the city and is committed to staying in Detroit. Do you all talk together, meet together to discuss common issues?
Yes, although in my experience, not formally in that context, and it's actually a really interesting idea. We do talk about a lot of the issues that are affecting the metro region as clergy. I will also say, unfortunately, for the last 2.5, 3 years, a primary focus of clergy has been making sure that our congregations survive and thrive during a pandemic. And it's been tremendously helpful to have the support of colleagues in Detroit. However, I think, please God, we will be soon moving toward a point where we're planning for the future of Detroit.
Right. Next question is for Sam. They start by saying, I love the story of how you moved to Detroit and sought out the Agree Synagogue. Are there members of the congregation that come into the city from the suburbs to join what's clearly a dynamic group?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And yes, there are participants from the suburbs who come and join us, and encourage those, if there are anyone on this webinar who would like to come visit, we're currently having services in a temporary location nearby while we're renovating the building, but we are still having services through this time. We're currently meeting at Christ Church Detroit on Jefferson, 960 Jefferson. And it's exciting. It's really exciting to see new people. I can say almost every week we have new people, which is really nice. And we've got from Huntington Woods, West Bloomfield, Farmington Hills, Royal Oak, Ferndale, even as far as Lansing.
Even Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor, excuse me, Ann Arbor. So definitely, it's really a unique, as you're saying, dynamic group. And another word that's been used is Hamish, which is a Yiddish word, but it feels like a home, and it's very warm and welcoming, and definitely people come from near and far. So thank you, and encourage you to come check us out.
If I can add a word to what Sam just said, the synagogue functions in a very interesting way because it will host visitors to the city who are staying in nearby hotels. It invites the suburban community in for various events that we sponsor. We also have any number of youngsters who in college are taking comparative religion courses who come to the synagogue because one of their assignments is to attend a service in religion. And as both the rabbi and Rachel, as all three, Rabbi Rachel and Sam have said, because we're located in the city doesn't mean that we only cater to those who live nearby. We do that, but in addition, even those suburbanites who come to the city, attorneys, business people and so forth, might have need for the synagogue for one reason or another, and we're there to serve them as well. So it's a very broadly, it's a very broad constituency to which we appeal and which we serve.
Great. Moving on to our next question, Rabbi Silverman, does city government reach out to the synagogue for input in community planning, policing, waterfront development, transportation?
So it's actually more a question for Rachel. I can tell you briefly that we are part of organizations like the Downtown Detroit Partnership, and we are very privileged to have some of the security that monitors downtown be very aware of our presence and making sure that we're kept safe. But Rachel, if there's things you want to add, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, not directly the way that the question asks it, but I do think that there are strong partnerships between organizations downtown, and that we have a really good relationship with the city. When we've had events that have outdoor components, we have like a wide network of people who help make those things happen and make sure the community stays safe.
Great. The next question is actually just a comment, but I'm going to read it out loud anyway. Bravo for making the elevator a funding priority. Which is, again, it was mentioned by a huge part of our mission. So it's very exciting for all of us that we can do that. Next question is for Rachel. Congratulations on the successful fundraising effort. Who is doing the work on the building, the architect, construction company, etc.?
Yes, our construction company is Saxey Construction in Detroit. Our architect is Newman Smith. Interiors are Lavu Interior Designs, and importantly, our owner's rep is Greg Donnelly at Proxy.
Next question is, the co-working space is a wonderful idea. Can you say more about how the costs will be shared, what services will be offered, whether you would consider a tenant that is not part of the Jewish community?
I think that there's a lot there, and that's kind of complicated, but I'm interested, if that person wants to reach out directly to me, I'm happy to share more. Basically, we have a small number of organizations that are coming in now, and we're working with them to make both like on the program side and on the financial side, make it be a good fit for everyone who's involved. And the programming and opportunities for collaboration that will go from there are something we're all working to design together. And at this point, it's a Jewish co-working space. The organizations are Jewish. It's possible that as time goes on, as our staff has more capacity, we're able to grow, that we'll be able to take on organizations that are mission aligned in other ways too.
So basically the need hasn't come up yet, but you're willing to entertain it if somebody approaches you with that inquiry. So the next question is, how best can we come and visit you and experience the Jewish community in Detroit?
There's a very short term and a longer term answer to that question. The very short term answer is that we are currently offsite and very much welcome you to come to our offsite location for services and for programs and for holiday celebrations. Check out our website and our newsletter, and you'll have all of that info. The longer term answer is come to the new building. Starting in the late summer, we're hoping that not only will there be crowds there for our major holiday celebrations, programs, classes, and worship services, but also just during the day, that as we are working closely together with other Jewish organizations, it'll be a place that you can see Jewish life in downtown Detroit really coming to life.
I believe there will be an event too, right, for the building opening.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an opportunity as well. Okay, we have like 3 minutes and 4 questions. One's a comment, so rapid fire. Rachel, what kind of activities could outside groups hold at the synagogue? What size of group could be accommodated?
The largest space would accommodate 100 people, unless you're having like tables, and then it's less. So it's not a large space. And if you have an idea for someone who wants to rent the space, reach out.
Cool. Next question is, the outdoor space on the roof is fabulous. What is your timeline for getting it done? Can you say more about how it will be used? It will be magic at twilight and into the evening.
I think that it will be, I think in 2 years, there'll be a built out roof deck. It's not just a question of building, it's also a question of funding. So when funding aligns and then the construction aligns, then we'll have a roof deck.
Awesome. One quick comment, just saying to Marty that an on-site archives is a good idea, and they can also see the Detroit Public Library and other repositories being interested in the records. So that might be an option as well. Lastly, I missed the plans for the 4th floor. Can you tell us again?
4th floor is our largest, most flexible space. So people who want to have events or programs, that's the space we'll use for that.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for presenting and sharing the history and current project and future vision for the synagogue. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your days and joining everyone and informing us on everything that's going on. But that concludes our webinar today. So thanks to everybody who joined as, I don't know how Zoom puts it, audience members, and for all of the great questions. Those were really fantastic. And I'm sure that they'll spark additional conversations as we move forward with these plans, which is always fantastic. And please keep an eye out for information on next month's webinar as well. Oh, and Rachel, if you're not seeing in the chat, be sure to follow us on social media. There's also an email list, and our website is downtownsynagogue.org, and there's a link in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Have a great day.
As the illustration, let me say how honored I am to be included in a gaggle of such able and wonderful women.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
great
you
day.
so much.
Thank you.